As the movie begins, a flash of bright light cuts through the darkness and eventually transforms into a human eye. In the background, we hear incoherent words in a female's voice. After a few tries, the woman is able to speak fluently. In the next scene, a motorcyclist revs through the streets of Glasgow, Scotland. When he notices a white van on the side of the road, he gets off his bike and picks up an unconscious young woman nearby. He puts her in the back of the van, and later a naked woman starts undressing her. Once the other woman puts on all of her clothes, she stares at the motionless body of the woman, and a tear flows from her eye. Unmoved by that, the other woman notices an ant crawling on the naked body, so she picks it up and observes it curiously, after which she leaves. Right then, we see some lights in the sky through a thick blanket of clouds over a skyscraper, and the lights slowly move away from each other. The woman leaves the deserted apartments and makes her way to the white van, where the motorcyclist unloads his bike and speeds away. The woman heads to a mall, where she buys some clothes and accessories. She notices how the women around her are particularly fond of makeup, so she gets herself some too and applies lipstick once inside her van. After that, she drives around town, looking carefully at isolated men. She finally manages to catch a guy's attention when she honks at him and pretends to ask for directions to the motorway. After engaging in a conversation, she learns that he has plans to meet someone, so she leaves and resumes her search. As it gets dark, she comes across another man. After giving her directions to the M8 motorway, the man begins to walk away, so she asks him if he lives nearby with his family. When he responds that he lives alone, she offers to drive him home, and he accepts. As they keep talking, the woman realizes she has lost interest in him and she drops him off right away. After a while, she spots another man and strikes up a conversation with him. When a friend calls him from some distance, the woman instantly drives away yet again. Eventually, she is successful in finding the right target. As he gets into her van and she starts driving, the woman asks him if he has a girlfriend. On learning that he is single, she starts flirting with the guy, who responds with full fervor. She brings him inside her rundown house and starts undressing seductively. The man follows suit, as he is overjoyed at the thought of sleeping with the gorgeous woman. She starts walking away and motions for him to come get her. As the man follows her, he unknowingly starts sinking into the floor, which seems to be a giant puddle of darkness. When the floor engulfs him entirely, the woman turns back and picks up her clothes, only to redress and set out hunting again. She drives around the streets of Glasgow, but does not find any man that intrigues her enough. The next morning, she goes to a beach where she sees a swimmer and waits by his towel for him. As usual, she chats with him to learn if he is alone, and to her happiness, he is. The guy had recently moved from the Czech Republic and is living nearby in a tent where he reads books. The woman gets ready to charm him when the swimmer notices another woman struggling to swim nearby. A huge wave displaces the poor lady, so the husband and the swimmer both dive into the water to rescue her. When they are unable to locate the drowning lady, the swimmer helps the husband back to the shore. Nevertheless, the husband attempts to find his wife again. The swimmer does not stop him this time and tries to catch his breath after being thrashed by the waves. The woman watches the whole accident from afar, but she has no sense of sympathy across her face. Instead, she walks over to the swimmer and knocks him unconscious by hitting his head with a rock. She then drags his body across the beach, totally ignorant of the wailing baby, and drives back to her home. Later that night, the motorcyclist shows up at the same beach and packs the tent and belongings of the swimmer. Just like the woman, he completely ignores the baby, who is still on the beach, totally unattended. In the next scene, the woman tries her luck again by driving around towns to pick up a man. A man yells at her from another car, but his driver speeds away. She follows them at a safe distance and stops her van when she sees the guy walking to a nightclub. She pursues him but notices that a crowd is approaching, so she turns back. That does not go too well for her because another group of girls drags her with them to the club, and she has no option but to go along. However, the loud music and the crowd make her very uncomfortable, so she finds her way out. She goes through a door that leads her into a lounge, where she sees that man from before. He tries to buy her a drink to make up for his earlier behavior and in hopes of sleeping with her. She takes the man back to the dark room in her house. Oblivious to his doom, he dances and removes his clothes as the woman starts undressing herself. When she starts walking backward to lure him, he walks into the dark abyss without noticing anything strange. By the time he gets confused about his surroundings, he notices that somehow he is watching the woman walk above him. He sees another man, the swimmer, in this strange abyss, and when he reaches out to touch him, suddenly the swimmer's bloated body explodes, reducing him to nothing but his skin. All his annihilated innards are collected via a funneled conduit extending extending into an opening on the wall. The following day, the woman continues her manhunt. A man brings her a rose when she is stuck in traffic and points out to a man in the car across the street. The woman is shocked to notice blood on her hands, but to her relief, it is from the delivery guy. When she turns on the radio, it says that a man's body washed up on the shore while his wife and baby are still missing. The police had to halt their rescue search mission due to heavy fog in that area. Unaffected, the woman keeps driving around, but this time she starts observing other women with interest. Later, she manages to pick a man and fakes interest in him when he compliments her eyes. Once she reaches her house, she has the man follow her inside, though reluctantly, and he meets his doom. Moments later, she reapplies her lipstick as the motorcyclist guy examines her thoroughly, after which he stares deep into her eyes. They don't exchange a word, but it seems like he is communicating with her telepathically. After that, the woman steps out for a walk. When she loses her footing and stumbles to the floor, she is astounded by the experience and stays in that position until some people help her up. After observing all the human interactions around her, she begins to drive. When she's stopped at a signal, a group of hooligans attack her car and try to get her out. Instead of panicking, she stays calm and drives away, looking for other men to take back home. She finds a lonely hooded man walking in the same direction, so she stops nearby and pretends to be lost. On learning that he is headed to the grocery store, she offers to drop him there. When he enters the car, the man's face is disfigured due to facial tumors. He tells her that he avoids making grocery store trips during the daytime as people look down upon him. The woman asks him the right questions, and even though he is reluctant initially, the man slowly warms up to her. After seducing him, she brings him to her house, and they both start undressing. Suddenly, they notice a strange dark figure walking around in the dark, but she asks the man to focus on her and strips herself stark naked. The man believes he is dreaming and follows her until he is submerged in the black liquid. After that, the woman dresses up and examines her body in the mirror downstairs. Suddenly, she decides to let her last prey go, so shortly after, she walks out of the house with the disfigured man. She watches from her van as the disfigured man makes his way through the fields. Meanwhile, the motorcyclist returns to the house and smashes the window of a nearby parked car. He pops open the trunk and goes on to subdue the disfigured man, whom he then bundles into the car and tries to track the woman along with 3 more motorcyclists. On the other hand, the woman comes across a dense fog, so she leaves the van and walks away. She hears someone singing nearby and follows the sound until she reaches a restaurant. There, she orders a piece of chocolate cake but ends up choking on it. Later, she walks around and takes a bus. The driver warns her about being underdressed for the weather, so a kind passenger offers her his jacket. She gets off with him and goes to a grocery store, surprised by the variety of goods. He brings her to his home and cooks for the 2 of them, but she does not touch the food. When he puts on a stand-up comedy on the TV, the woman focuses on it, trying to figure out why the audience is laughing. Later, he brings her some tea and wishes her good night, but instead of sleeping, the woman examines her naked body in front of the mirror. The morning after, the man and the woman go for a walk. They visit a ruined castle, and he helps her cross a puddle in a few steps. Once they are back in his house, she props her face so he can kiss her, and they begin to make love. However, the woman stops him and grabs a lamp to examine her genitals. The next morning, the woman goes out for a walk in the woods by herself and runs into a logger, who warns her about the forest being slippery due to the weather. She finds her way to a cabin and decides to rest there for a while. However, her rest is cut short as she wakes up to the logger molesting her. She runs into the forest to get away from him and climbs up a logging truck. Since the keys are missing, she honks the horn to get help, but no one comes. The logger finally catches her and pins her to the ground to force himself on her. The woman is shocked and confused when he undresses her, but in doing so, he rips her skin, revealing her black, featureless body. The man flees away in horror, while the woman looks at her face that blinks at her. The logger returns with his fuel tank and sets her on fire. As the flames ravage her, she does not shout or scream. She runs out of the woods and eventually falls on the snow-covered ground. In the end, we see the motorcyclist trying to locate the woman from a mountaintop, while her ashes ascend with the smoke and then settle down on the ground. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Watch the next videos on the screen and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.